Allora, siete caldi sicuramente perché freddo non fa in questa sala. Prima di introdurre il prossimo ospite volevo dirvi una cosa, che stamattina abbiamo iniziato con una canzone di Ligabue che si chiama Made in Italy, che Ligabue ha scritto perché immaginava un viaggio di nozze di una coppia in Italia, una cosa che non si fa più. Quindi vedendo tutti questi bellissimi video delle nostre regioni mi viene voglia di incentivare i viaggi di nozze a casa nostra, nelle nostre regioni che sono strepitose. Now it's time to go back to English. I'll introduce our next speaker. As you know, we have decided with this year to open a window on the future. And the first one to open the window on the future of travel, it's Javier Delgado Muerza from Google.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Giancarlo. Thanks very much to the sponsors. And thanks very much especially to all of you who are here today to share the next 20 to 30 minutes about what's Google's vision on the future of travel. Before we start, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Javier Delgado. I come from Spain and I look after travel vertical search for Europe. When we talk about vertical search, we're talking about the specific solutions that Google has developed for an industry, in this case, travel. And we will talk about which are those specific solutions and how they have incarnated in specific products. Before we get started, I would like to run a video that I believe has already been shown here at BTO, but a video that encapsulates very well what we are doing in travel and why we are developing these different products. Possiamo prendere il video, per favore? So micro moments, that's exactly what we're trying to cater for. And the technological solutions that we are developing are solutions that will enable players like you, hotels, and other kind of players of the hospitality industry to connect with this user base in those specific micro moments. Can we pass on to the next slide, please? Micro moments are exactly the convergence of three things, and the user is at the very center. And these three things are the context, the intent, and the immediacy. So the fact that we put the user at the very center allows us to develop an ecosystem of products and technologies that interpret what the user is looking for at that very exact moment and cater to them with an ad in case an ad is relevant. An example of this can be when I arrived this morning here in Firenze, in Florence. I already have a hotel booking because I know that I will be at this conference since a few months ago. So when I enter the hotel name, it is obvious that I'm not looking to make a reservation. At that point in time, what's relevant to me is how long is it going to take me to get there? Is there traffic on the way? Does the hotel have breakfast until late? Data points of that nature is what matters to me when I'm on my way to my hotel in the destination. By that example, I'm trying to illustrate the importance of these micro moments, which is composed of these three things. And the interesting piece is that these three things converge in a single device that we all have in our pockets or in our purses, and that's the mobile phone. The mobile phone has become the backbone of communication, of integration of the user who's at the very center and the whole travel ecosystem. So by understanding those signals and being able to interpret them and go back to the user, we are developing travel products that are very relevant for these specific users. I like to use this slide very much because it depicts how fast things are changing. If we look from right to left, from left to right in your case, we see how much time it took for significant technological products or inventions to sell 1 million units. When the iPod was launched by Apple in 2001, it took them almost 1 year, over 360 days, to sell 1 million units. As you go down the line, you see different products with different price points and different functionalities. But the point is that all these products have been absorbed and adopted by the users at a very much faster pace through time. And it only goes to 2013. But the point is that the mobility has become at the core, and the adoption of new technologies and new products is only accelerating. As a consequence of that, the solutions that we need to bring to the user are always more complex and faster. This is not a sociology or a psychology class, but I'm sure most of you in this audience have seen the Maslow's pyramid. Maslow's pyramid describes what are the basic needs of the human being to survive, things like food, shelter, water, and then it goes up level by level all the way to self-fulfillment. I like to use this slide because even though it's satirical, it describes very well how things have changed through time. Wi-Fi has become even more important than food and shelter for some of us. At least for me, it has. And underneath that, we've got battery. You will say, why are you using this slide in this context? Just to stress the fact that the mobile phone is the key point of connection between a user and the whole ecosystem. In that context, I would like to break down the phases of travel by 4 main areas. And this is nothing new. This has been going around for decades. And the 4 main areas are the dreaming phase, when I'm trying to decide or understand where do I want to go. This is a very rhetorical phase. I don't know, I just want to get inspired. And for that specific moment, or for that specific phase, Google has developed destinations. Destinations leverages different sources of information and allows the user to make a guess or to understand where they can go depending on their plans, budget, flying time, themes, and different aspects. Once the user has decided where he or she wants to go, it becomes the research and booking phase. For these 2 phases, we have 2 products that actually touch upon the most important components of the travel, which are the flight and the hotel. Google Flight Search and Google Hotel Ads, which is probably the reason why many of you are here today with us. And we're going to dive a bit deeper onto that. Our latest launch has been Google Destinations. And Google Destinations caters to the user once they have already arrived to this place. Traditionally, the industry or the digital industry, I should say, has been focusing in the 2 points in the middle, because that is where the transaction happens, where the booking, the reservation is made, the flight is bought, and so on. But we are trying to cover the whole spectrum of the travel space with these different products. In this slide, you can see how Google travel products have evolved. So, some 5-6 years ago, Google was selling or was connecting supply and demand for travel in the exact same way we were doing for every other industry, meaning 10 blue links. 3 links at the top, 3 links at the bottom, 4 links on the right-hand side. That was the format that was believed to better serve the user. We realized that for such a complex decision as travel, that format was not ideal. We still want to connect supply and demand in the most efficient way for the user, but we had to develop new products and services that would allow the user to connect with that industry and those service providers in a better way. That's why Google Flight Search was developed on top of ITA software. That's why Google Hotel Ads technology was developed. And if you remember, we originally launched a site that was called Hotel Finder. Hotel Finder is a site that was dismantled over a year ago. And what was the reason for dismantling that site? The reason is the following. We just talked about the importance of micro moments and understanding the signals that the user is sending mainly through their mobile phone behavior to cater to those specific needs. We concluded that having a destination site, so a URL that you would go to look for a hotel, was not a great user experience. What we decided to do is to leverage the different Google properties like Google Maps, Google Search, Gmail, and the rest of our products, and serve that inventory availability and pricing to the user at the exact point in time that most matters. In the same fashion, we developed Google Destinations. Upper in the funnel, higher in the funnel, when the user still doesn't know where they want to go, we leverage all the data and we serve it in a structured way that will allow the user to make better decisions. The last addition is Trips, which interprets all the data points from the user and structures the data in a way that is relevant to them when they are on the destination, and even if they don't have Wi-Fi. So by now, I hope I have conveyed to you the clear idea that what we are doing is putting the user at the very center. And from there, we are developing these 4 big families of products that allow the user to connect with the travel industry, and more importantly today, the travel industry, all of you, to connect with those users. I was mentioning the different Google products that we have, and here you can see the different Google products family: Maps, Search, Chrome, Android, DoubleClick, and a few others. And the interesting piece is that all of these, or most of these, almost all of them, have over 1 billion users. That allows us to have scale. And that allows us to structure vast amounts of data in a way that is very relevant to the user. And travel is an industry where data is very rich. You've got city pairs, you've got hotel names, you've got rate plans, room numbers, you name it. That's why we have invested so much time and effort in trying to structure the travel data for the user, which connects directly with our mission as a company, which is structure and make available all the information in the world. I will now talk about another aspect that has driven the decisions that Google has taken on this area. And it's actually 2. As you can see on display, out of the 3 main outgoing markets in Europe, the vast majority of the users in those markets are planning travel more than once a month. When you multiply that by the number of people that inhabit those countries, the math will tell you very quickly the amount of time and the amount of effort that is put into planning all of those vacations. So there's a complex world with lots of data and lots of people trying to consume it, and consuming it. That makes the perfect ecosystem for us to enter and develop our products. Second to that, as you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, a great majority of the population in those countries are terrified of not making the right decisions when it comes to choosing the vacation. Interestingly enough, people are more worried about choosing their vacation wrongly, the wrong hotel, the wrong destination, the wrong pricing, more than getting the wrong mortgage. If you think about the impact of a mortgage, that may have a 15 or 20-year lifetime value, the value of that error of getting 0.1 or 0.2 points worse than you could have gotten is going to cost you tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of euros. People are less worried about that than getting the wrong vacation, the wrong hotel for their wives, their children, or themselves. So we've got a vast amount of data, lots of users trying to dive through it, and time and money that is very special and very important for them. That's why we're looking at this data and structuring it going forward. If we look at how things have evolved in this year, there are two interesting factors. People are spending less time in every session, but they're visiting more sites. The access to information has become a commodity mainly because of the mobile phone. So we are using snacks of data when we are on the metro, when we are waiting at the dentist, whenever that is, we go and we enter, and we look at a hotel, we look at a flight, or we look at certain component of the travel itinerary that we are looking for. It has been discussed before today, the importance of attribution. That creates an enormous complexity for marketeers to decide when to be present and how to be present. But at the same time, it creates an enormous opportunity to address an audience that, if it's understood, it can be very well catered for. The previous panel mentioned that people on average visit 38 sites before they purchase travel, and this is data coming from Google, which was conducted, I think, 2 years ago. Think about when do you want to be in front of that user? On the site number 1, on the site number 38, or in all of them? It really depends on what the intent is. So we have a user that is more promiscuous, but is spending less time to every site they go. But one of the interesting pieces is that conversion levels have remained stable. And it's precisely because of that fact that we are developing solutions like Book on Google. How many of you are familiar with Book on Google? Show of hands. I think I see 2 or 3. Which obviously means we are not doing a good job explaining to the industry what Book on Google is. But we will get there, and we will spend more time in Italy explaining this. Basically, Book on Google is a layer of usability that we are applying in certain outgoing markets. So far, it's launched in the United States and in the UK to solve the problem of the conversion on mobile phones. So we have discussed the importance of mobile. We have discussed how much time is being spent on those devices. But the problem is that the users find it very difficult to convert, to complete the transaction on that device. As a consequence, this technology has been developed, which removes all of the friction related to that transaction. The user does not need to enter details with their thumbs, which is something very complex. They don't need to enter credit card details. We take all the pain out of the transaction, and we just allow it to convert very smoothly. I won't get into the product details, but this is a product that is for free, and it aims to help the ecosystem and highly digitized industries like the travel industry and the hotel industry to convert better, especially on mobile devices, and as a consequence, obtain a higher return on investment, a higher ROI. Another area in which we are investing seriously is surfacing deals. As you see, 2 of the main outgoing countries, the population in those markets is very worried about not getting value. Value understood as, am I making the most out of every dollar, every euro I spend on this transaction? When you're trying to discover which hotel you should stay in Florence, you want to know a number of things. User content, that was also mentioned earlier today, is really important, but also how good is this deal? 300 euros might be cheap or might be expensive depending on the competitive set of that hotel, depending on is it available on other sites at a cheaper price. So we're trying to understand what are all those drivers and how is that property featured, not only on their website but in other websites, to show and tell the user that that is a very good deal and a good use of their money for that trip specifically. If you look at the figures on this slide, you can see that travel and vacation, leisure travel specifically, remains one of the most important spending decisions for every household in Europe. It's more important that where do you live or which car do you buy, is how much money and where am I going to spend these dollars or these euros to make the most of my most valuable time, which is leisure time. So I wanted to give you a brief description of these 4 areas in which we're working and the different products we have developed specifically for these phases of travel. My colleague, who is the Industry Director for Travel, Fabio Galetto, will be on stage tomorrow, and he's going to dive very deep into hotel ads specifically, which will give you many responses as how you, as an hotelier, independent or franchisee or whatever your corporate structure is, can get the most value out of Google as a partner to capture more traffic and to capture more reservations with a better or optimized, increased ROI. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Javier. Sit on the sofa. And to interview Javier, we have a friend of BTO, Martin Cohen from T-Nuts. Okay, I'll leave it to you, and then we're gonna take some questions from the floor.
PA for that. Nice to see you again.
Hello, Martin.
Can you hear me?
Microfono?
Turn me on.
Right, you're on.
Okay. Thanks for the presentation. Just mention, if anybody didn't know, there's Think with Google. A lot of this information is available free of charge to anybody that knows how to use a search engine. So just key Think with Google micro moments into Google, and you can find out a lot of what was set up there. Now, so far today, we've had Priceline Group, we've had TripAdvisor, we've had Expedia. These are massive, massive, massive businesses with huge budgets. You know, Priceline allegedly spending $3 billion a year on Google. There is a perception in the business that Google is very much in cahoots with the big guys. And what I'd be quite interested to talk to you about is how smaller hotels and destinations are able to be part of the Google ecosystem. The slide that you showed with dream, plan, book, experience. I mean, is there mechanisms in place for, as I said, smaller hotels, smaller destinations that haven't got $3 billion to spend on Google AdWords to be part of your massive consumer reach?
Short answer is absolutely yes. The longer answer, let me start by addressing the figure you used about Priceline Group. I'm not familiar with those figures. I'm not denying, I'm not confirming. They are a great partner of ours, like the others you mentioned, and many others with whom we work in the travel industry. But on that point, I think it's important to stress one fact. Our aim is to create an open ecosystem where everyone can participate. The bigger publicly traded companies that you mentioned and others, but also the small independently owned and managed hotels in Italy and all over the world. So our intention is to be able to connect all that supply and all that demand. It is true that the smaller companies or the smaller hotels, in this case that you were mentioning, normally don't have the same level of resources, either financial, human, technological, of any nature, than the bigger chains or the bigger OTAs. But our product is an auction-based product, meaning you can participate in equal terms with the rest of the bigger guys, like you mentioned. An example of this would be if I have a very small and curated hostel or hotel here in Florence, I may want to address specifically an audience that is looking for a small homey, special hotel in Florence next to the river. By this I mean you can target specifically with Google solutions the exact specific market that you're looking for in terms of consumption or in terms of origin by point of sale or point of origin and so forth. If we go to travel-specific products, vertical search products, as I said, we want to have all of the supply available, but not only through the bigger OTAs. For those hotels who wish to be present with us and who wish to be present with Google, they can do so. We do not develop one-to-one relationship with that family-owned hotel across the Fortezza di Basso that has 30 rooms. We have a network of partners. We have over 55 partners worldwide. A nice sum of them here in Italy, I think it's 8 or 10, who are local technology players that allow those small hotels to connect with Google, which is a big and complex company, and they develop the feeds. So those APIs, those technical capabilities that allow the independent hotel in Firenze to be listed in equal terms to the bigger guys.
So the idea then is for the smaller hotels to find the right partner to work with Google rather than to try and work with Google directly.
Exactly. So there's a site that was listed at the end of my presentation, which is www.google.it/ads/hotels, where you can find all the information regarding how to integrate for Google Hotel Ads, which is one of the products that I spoke about. Moreover, on that note, we realized that one of the problems or one of the complexities in working with Google is the risk, the financial risk that you need to enter when you're playing on CPC, on a cost per click basis, the complexity of understanding how the system works, how the product works, and how it behaves. You need to manage AdWords. Hotel Ads, for the time being, is separate to AdWords, so it's a complex issue. And in many cases, these smaller properties, it's a family-run hotel by 3, 4, 5 people, but they don't have a revenue manager and a reservations manager, or they do, but it's the same person doing all the functions. That is why we developed a program called Google Hotel Ads Commission Program, in which the hotel has no risk whatsoever because they only pay on consumed reservations, meaning they get a reservation that has been facilitated by Google, the guest arrives, and only upon checkout, net of cancellations, they will pay a commission to Google. This feature was developed specifically for the smaller players.
Okay, so there's a commission structure in place there, which then conveniently leads me into the question that T-News always asks a Googler when we have them on the sofa, and that is, Google as an OTA. I mean, you are everything other than nominally an online travel agent if you're distributing inventory at a commission rate. How does that different from what Expedia does?
It's a very good question. Let me answer very clearly. We are not an OTA, and we do not intend to become one.
So where does what you do differ from what OTAs does?
Yeah, Martin, could you repeat what you just said? Your mic was off.
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking I'm not sure if the translate, but it's a semantics conversation about the definition of an online travel agency. Basically, what you do is you sell hotels for a commission, which is basically what an OTA would do. So why are you so insistent that what you do isn't an online travel agency?
For two reasons specifically. the transaction happens on the hotel environment. So it is true that we get closer to the transaction with a model like this one, but we are not making the transaction happen. We are facilitating the booking in this case. So if you remember the slide that I used on how Google products have evolved through time, the blue links to what we are now with a feature like Commission Program, we've gone from very high in the funnel to at the very bottom of the funnel, which is where the transaction happens. So Commission Program gets closer to the bottom of the funnel, but it doesn't get into the agent space. Why? Because we are bringing that demand very close to the supply, or that supply very close to the demand. You put it as you wish. And then we allow the transaction to happen in the hotel space. And this brings me to the second point.
Javier, if I could just interrupt for 1 second. Could you
Please.
explain to the audience when you say funnel, because this morning I asked how many in the audience understand funnel economics, and very few people either raised their hand or admitted. So just plain English, what do you mean when you say funnel?
All right. Let me explain that for a second. But to ensure that we get the message across, let me just say one thing in Italian. Google non ha voglia di essere un agente di viaggio. Noi non stiamo diventando un OTA. Questo deve essere molto chiaro. And now I'll switch back to English to be able to answer Martin's questions. So in the funnel, we're talking about, this is a marketing concept that starts from the bottom, which is a very open, a circle that is very big. And as you go down this funnel, you lose users because they fall from that path to the transaction. So depending on which part of the funnel you want to address, you need to have different approaches, and the economics are very different. Performance marketing, which is what the travel industry has been doing forever, is focusing on the conversion. You do not want the user to remember your name, or you do not want to develop or create brand equity. I'm talking about the smaller properties now. What you're looking for is to fill your rooms. So you're using SEM, search engine marketing, as a mean to transact, to generate revenue, normally through websites, your own website or other websites. So how you approach this funnel, which I think translates like imbuto in Italian, is the way to understand how this works. Commission model is a step down, or it's a step towards the very bottom of the funnel, but we stay out of it. Why? Because, as I said, the transaction happens at the hotel level.
Okay. So Dream Plan Book Experience is an oddly shaped funnel, but I'd like to maybe just concentrate on the experience part of the micro moments. And Google recently has launched Google Trips, which, as I understand it, is a free app that you can download to plan your trip while you're actually in destination. So again, for destinations in the room, how can they participate in that product? How can a museum or a gallery or a zoo become part of the app that will drive visitors to a city to their destination or attraction? Again, I'm just trying to find an in to Google for the smaller, more independent types of attractions.
Which is a very good point, but there are two different products. So one is destinations, that is on the upper funnel. So when the user is looking for inspiration and looking at different possibilities in terms of cost, or in terms of content, in terms of culture, in terms of what they want to do, and that's destinations. And trips is actually at the other end of the spectrum, is once the user has already made the reservation and is going to the destination. So let me take the first part of the question first. How can a service provider, a restaurant, a museum, a shop, any kind of player on a destination play? Today, we do not have a program that allows industry players to participate there. We are using our own content. As you know, Google has content from Zagat, Frommer's, and other sources that are proprietary. these companies that we have acquired in the past, and we are leveraging that use. That's one of the pillars. Another pillar is user behavior. So through the different Google products that were displayed earlier in my presentation, we have a wealth of information coming from the different product families. That allows us to know what are the most visited sites and what are the busiest times in a given city. For example, if you're going to the Galleria degli Uffizi, at what time there's more people there, or the people that go who are not from a country but are visiting a city, how much time do they spend when they have one day in Firenze, what's the itinerary they do. That allows us to understand those patterns, and those patterns together with the information that we have on the destination from sources like Google My Business, which is a free listing feature that Google offers, we can create itineraries. My suggestion for a partner or for a player on a destination that wants to participate would be to ensure they have good digital assets, so a good website. Well, first of all, that they have a good product. You know, if they're selling boots or if they're selling glasses or they're selling pizza, whatever that is, the product must be good. Then that they're paying a lot of attention to the user-generated content around them, either on their own sources or on third-party sources like the ones you mentioned before. Third point would be have a very good digital assets, a set of good digital assets. That would be a website in different languages, a website that is optimized for mobile, that it allows players to interact via click-to-call with voice in case they want to, and that they're well referenced on top of that through Google My Business, meaning that they have claimed their form, that they have full control of it, that they have a proper phone number, that everything is complete.
Gentlemen, sorry, we have an audience question. It's okay. He's going to ask in Italian. Maybe you could translate back to English. Yeah.
I'll do, no problem.
Buonasera a tutti, mi chiamo Mero Mariani, Destination Manager della città di Terni e della Cascata delle Marmore. Abbiamo appreso che il funnel del marketing, l'obiettivo di Google non è di diventare un'OTA, ma di attrarre domanda e di facilitare il processo verso l'offerta. Avete dei dati di questo flusso?
Let me translate. Yes. No, Javier, you understand Italian. You don't need a translation, right?
Sì, parlo un po'.
Perfetto.
But for the audience, they need to know.
I just asked about the funnel of marketing. Google said he's not going to be an OTA, but he's pulling demand and facilitating the process, pushing the supply. I said if they have some data of this flow.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the exact question.
Some data on the flow. What do you mean? I think he wants to understand if you're not an OTA and you're just facilitating, do you have any numbers or how big or what's involved? He's trying to understand what facilitating means.
Okay, the numbers in terms of conversions, or so a few numbers were shared about what's happening with the user in terms of the time spent on the session, so it's lower time on more sites. That's one thing. We are seeing that conversion rates on mobile are stable, and that's why we're developing new products to improve those. So if you're talking about general conversion rates, those vary quite substantially from business model to business model. So an OTA has usually a strong focus on usability, and that gives them a higher number of conversions than hotels that tend to have a lower number of conversions. But Philip, maybe you can help because it's your
he just asked, told me to follow up here. Are you offering any traffic numbers on how this booking in Google is working? Is it an experiment? Is there a lot of flow? He's trying to get an idea of how serious it is.
This is a book on Google specific question.
Yes.
So let me give you two answers. First one, we have over 170,000 hotels active in the world. This product, from a user perspective, is launched in only 2 markets as of now, in the United States and the UK, which are very good markets because they're very mature and with heavy usage. But it's only in those 2 for the time being because of different regulatory issues that I won't get into. We have seen substantial, and by substantial I mean more than 100 and 200% conversion increase in the partners that have deployed this feature called Book on Google. Does that answer your question? Thank you.
Yeah, so as I understand, Book with Google is working in the US and UK so far. Okay.
It is working well, yes.
Okay. Before the question from the floor came up, you mentioned sort of user behaviour, and another buzzword that appears on panel sessions like this is the idea of personalisation and the way in which travel brands or attractions or suppliers can ensure that their product is being made available to the right person at the right time. Again, how does Google address that? To make sure that its travel customers are not spending their budgets in areas where there's very little chance of conversion. I mean, there's no point in somebody trying to serve me ads for a golfing holiday or a Formula One holiday. I'd much rather have an antiques market holiday. So how do you ensure that the ads that I see and have a chance to click on are the sort of ads that I want to see?
So it's a very vast question. I'll answer it with three different pieces. The first one is by developing products that are addressing different needs of the user at different times. Like what I mentioned, destinations, flights, hotels, and trips. That's one way of allowing the players that want to participate on those products to address audiences that are in different phases of the funnel. That's one side. Second, if you look at, I don't want to get too technical, but if you go to the stack, meaning the different levels of technology that you need to use to have a comprehensive, a solid, a 360-degree solution as to sell online, Google offers different products. Let me mention just one of them, remarketing. So Google can allow you to re-impact a user that has been on your website, that has consulted a certain date, that has looked at a certain room type, and that that has not yet completed a purchase. So we have the technology which is available for any partner of ours to really understand what's happening on their website and then creating tailor-made solutions for those users based on their behavior. There are things like analytics, which is a free product that Google offers to partners to understand their digital assets. And on top of that, we are constantly developing new ways of understanding how the user behaves. If you look for a hotel in London, the search results that you're going to get are very different to the results I am going to get. And we might be doing the search from the same phone, one next to each other. And the reason is that we are able to interpret a vast amount of data about each user and serve the right ad, if it's a 5-star hotel or if it's a hostel, depending on what I'm looking for. Or more importantly, if I know that this user is in an airport and this user, there's a number of canceled flights on that airport.
Javier, we have another question from the floor. Sorry to interrupt you, but I want to be right on time for the question.
Okay, thank you. Security is a topic in the travel industry. I would like to know if you are willing to work aside of the security about behavior of people, of traveler, and you know everything, you know where he is, what he is looking for, and also about visa, because visa is another problem in the travel industry. You can maybe be part of the identity process of the traveler. Have you ever think about this?
Are you asking me for my opinion about security and visas? I'll give you my personal opinion on both. So I think that visas are a bad thing for the travel industry in general. They might be necessary because of regulations. But anything that prevents people from traveling, again, this is my personal opinion, I don't think it's good. On security, I believe that there has been significant strides made on getting security processes better, but we're still far away from where we would like to be. It is in a space where biotechnology and artificial intelligence is evolving very quickly. but I think it's more the regulatory piece that doesn't follow as fast as the technology piece is advancing. So my hope would be to see a lot of change and a lot of advancement in the upcoming years. But again, this is my personal opinion.
Another audience question, but he's asked me to speak on his behalf because his English isn't so good. This gentleman works for one of the regional tourism development authorities, and he has a question about the content on Google Maps. He thinks it's only user-generated content and wants to know if tourism authorities, for example, can work with Google to get the credible, validated content also to appear on Google Maps searches.
Short answer is yes, absolutely. So Google Maps is a division that is run by Geo, which is a specific division that looks at this. It's an engineering division, so they're not so much oriented to the commercial side of the business, but the short answer is yes. And let me give you a specific example. We have recently launched an initiative in Cape Verde, which is an archipelago, a group of islands in the Atlantic Ocean, where they were facing a very problematic issue, which is that hotels did not have addresses, so a physical address that you can refer to. And apparently this is also an issue in many continental Africa countries. Google has actually deployed engineers who have found a solution to map out every specific hotel in Cape Verde by creating new references, so addresses, as if they were traditional postal addresses for those places. Now, without going as far as Cape Verde, please do come and see me afterwards, and I'll be happy to connect you with the right people at Google to get that.
I have another one, Javier.
Yes.
That was from one person of the audience, but he asked me to do it, which is payments. Obviously, Google now is controlling, let's say, half of the market of the smartphones, more or less, maybe more than half.
Are you talking about Android?
Android, yeah. Because everything, it seems that method of payments will be the next big thing, or probably they are already there. And by obviously controlling half of the smartphone, Google has a big possibility with Google Wallet. What do you think?
A few things on this. First of all, I'm not an expert on the area, so I don't have much to say. Second, I don't know if Google controls, as you say. Google has a leadership position in the area of operating systems with Android, for example. Google Wallet is a product that is launched in some markets. It's not available globally, so that creates already a limitation as to how to take these to market. But if we look at payments, which I fully agree with you that it's a very important area, not only for the travel industry, but for any trade. In our case, in an area which I am familiar with, we have developed this solution called Book on Google that actually what does is remove the friction. So payments, because there are different parties involved and there's very sensitive data that needs to be passed from one partner to the other, from the user to the merchant, and sometimes through an intermediary, it's an extremely sensitive process. Google takes security and privacy in an absolutely religious way, in a very serious way, and that's why we are investing a lot of time and effort in that area. But as I said before, on the security and visa aspect, sometimes the regulatory bodies are not as fast as we would like.
Well, the clock in front of me says we've got just under 60 seconds. So any other quick questions? Or maybe just remind the audience about the hotel ads session tomorrow. I mean, one of the things I've been trying to talk to Javier about is this idea to get away from Google just being there for the big guys and try and get him to drill down into the small guys. There is a session tomorrow where...
Yes, let me reiterate that we want to work with every player that wants to play with us in the hotel space. There's a site which is www.google.it/ads/hotels, where you have all the information to connect with Google if you're an independent player. And my colleague Fabio Galetto will be on the stage tomorrow talking specifically and in-depth and in Italian about the hotel ads technology and how partners like this audience can make the most out of it.
9 seconds, we did it.
Thank you very much.